I did some painting recently and got out an old pot of paint. It had been started. It was still about half full, but when I put the brush in it, the liquid had turned really from a thick consistency to something more like water. And when I applied it to the wall, yes, it covered, but it was very thin. It wasn't the paint that it set out to be. And we can't always tell from the label, from what's on the outside, what's going to be on the inside. But as we look at this series, we're looking at what is the hallmark of a Christian, of a disciple. And the picture that Jesus gives is really helpful for us to understand what is a disciple really like. Today we're going to look at one particular aspect. And Jesus says these words in John chapter 13. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. The whole of the Bible describes God as a God of love. From the Old Testament through to the New Testament, we see repeated commands about loving, and we get the commandment, the very first commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And all the way through to the teachings of Jesus. Jesus one time was asked, what's the most important commandment? And Matthew, one of the early disciples, followers of Jesus, interesting character Matthew. Matthew was Jewish by birth, but in his job he became a tax collector for the Roman authorities, and that would have been a really looked down upon profession, because effectively he was taking the taxes from the local people to give to the occupying regime. So he was not a popular person. He was an outcast, but he had an encounter with Jesus and becomes a disciple, a follower of Jesus. And he records Jesus' words in this way, Matthew 22. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbour as yourself. Matthew records these words and emphasises the words that Jesus speaks, that love of God and love of our neighbour are the two most important things. Wet, Wet, Wet had the famous song, Love is All Around You. And the truth is that love is all around us, but not all love is good. Not all love is genuine. Some is manipulative, some is lustful, some is narcissistic, and some is just selfish. But of course, there is also genuine love. And the question is, what does Jesus describe as genuine love? And how does the Bible put that? If we are to love one another, what does that look like? John chapter 13, the disciple John, who was known as the disciple that Jesus loved, the whole of his writings emphasize this understanding of being in a relationship with God and with Jesus who loved him. In John chapter 13, verse 34, recording the words of Jesus, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." You know, at weddings, passages about love are very often read. In fact, I want to read one of the passages which is probably one of the most commonly read passages in the Bible at weddings. And it's 1 Corinthians 13, and it's the passage about love and the characteristics of what love looks like. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonour others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. These characteristics of love are beautiful, but difficult to attain in most of our lives. But this is a effectively what we're expected and what we should be becoming like when we are a disciple of Jesus. That earlier passage where Jesus said that we should love one another so as I have loved you. Jesus' love for us was that he gave everything for us, even to the point of death. He loved us so much that he went to the point of death to demonstrate his love. These characteristics about not keeping a record of wrongs, but always thinking the best and always rejoicing, always protecting and always trusting, always hoping, always persevering. These are beautiful characteristics that we should have, not just to display them, but with one another in the church. This is a hallmark of a disciple, that we love one another. And this is the evidence, this is the fruit of a life following after Jesus. I guess this passage means that we have quite a bit of homework to do. There's not an easy list of things to become. Christine and I have got a verse that we often refer to in the way that we want to be dealing with people. We think of this and we would encourage others to do the same. In Romans 12, verse 18, it says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." There's an onus on us to be the ones that bring peace, to be the ones that are, if you like, the adult in the situation, that are willing to forgive first, the willingness to overlook a wrong for the sake of love. And sometimes that means that we are hurt, and sometimes it means that we overlook things that are said which could be hurtful, but it's because we have a greater love for that person than looking out for the detail or the injury that they might otherwise have caused us. I want to read another passage which I love, describes the disciples in the early church. This is a few verses from this passage, this iconic passage in Acts chapter 2 at the end. It's describing what the early church was like, and it's a pattern for how we're to be. I'll be repeating this at various points because it's so important for us to understand what it means to fully be disciples. And we get the best picture when we see these disciples that had encountered Jesus face to face, had witnessed him being crucified, saw him resurrected and ascended into heaven, and then they were living out this life as early Christians, as followers of him. This is what they were like. It says in Acts 2:42, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread. And it goes on to say, and all the believers were together and had everything in common. Every day, it says, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. You get this sense of real community, the time they spent together, the things that they did in common. It talks about them helping each other out with practical needs, supporting one another. But they experienced immeasurable favour from the people around them because of the way they lived. They epitomise that verse that Jesus said, is that this is how they will know that you're my disciples, because your love for one another. You know, when you're raising children, often one of the ways that it's helpful to describe love is by spelling it as Time. We show our children that we love them by giving them of our time, probably one of our most valuable possessions. Giving gifts can be just so transitory, but when we give of our time, we can never earn that again. And children understand that. So when we come to give love and love one another within the church, it means that it will involve us time, sacrificing time, spending time with one another, speaking to each other, being in touch with each other regularly, coming together. In this current pandemic season, obviously we're not able to come together in the way that we would otherwise. And maybe this is going to be with us for quite some time, some of these restrictions. But I want to encourage us to be looking for ways that we can be in touch with one another, demonstrate love for one another in the most creative ways we possibly can. We're sharing little videos. We can make phone calls. We can do Zoom calls and come together in groups on Zoom, etc. And hopefully soon we might be able to, just a few people at a time, gather together just to be in the same place at the same time, face to face. But the essence of what I want to speak about this command of Jesus, that we love one another, is that it becomes a hallmark of who we are, and it affects the very culture of who we are as a church. Because when we really love one another, that's attractive. People in our society are looking for community. Loneliness is one of the greatest afflictions of our society, and even more so when people have been isolated from their friends for so long. We want to be a place where there's a real community, where people can be welcomed into that and experience deep friendship. I want to encourage you, let's make that part of who we are. And as we do that, we will believe the best for people, we'll want the best for them, and we'll give of our best. The example that Jesus gives is for us to follow in this commandment is that he gave his life for us. I've mentioned that's the ultimate sacrifice that demonstrates his love. We're unlikely to be called to give that level of sacrifice, but we do need to demonstrate that level of love and that care for one another. If you're not yet a Christian and you're listening to this and watching this, I want to encourage you that you can experience this love that God has for you, and you can experience this sense of community in a local church. And we'd love for you to connect with us if you're nearby geographically and to Musselburgh. But either way, we want you to experience a deep relationship with Jesus. If you'd like to find out more, then please message and send us your details, and we'll be in touch with you. I'd love to get in touch with you. I'd love to pray with you, send you some information. But can I just end this short message by saying that the marks of a disciple is that we follow Jesus' command. He says that we should love our Lord, our God, with all that we are. I spoke about that last week, enjoying Jesus, enjoying our relationship with Jesus. But the second mark is that we are those that love one another, that we really love one another so that others can see it. It's not just a label that we wear, but it's what's deep inside us.